The black sedan pulled up to the private terminal at Chicago Executive Airport, just as the morning sun broke through the clouds. Robert Harrison stepped out, adjusting his expensive watch and straightening his tie. At 45, he had built a tech empire that made him one of the youngest billionaires in America. Today was supposed to be just another routine flight to New York for a board meeting. His driver quickly unloaded the leather briefcase and small carry-on bag from the trunk. Robert barely noticed the man's efficiency anymore. When you flew private, twice a week for business, these small luxuries became as ordinary as taking a city bus. "Thank you, David," Robert said, handing the driver a tip. "Pick me up tomorrow evening at 7. As David drove away, Robert walked toward the gleaming white Gulfstream G650 sitting on the tarmac. The jet cost him $12 million, but it was worth every penny for the freedom it gave him. No waiting in long security lines, no delayed flights, no crying babies or chattering passengers. Just him, his work, and the clouds. That's when he noticed her. A young girl, maybe 12 years old, sat alone on a metal bench near the aircraft hangar. She was small for her age, with neat braids and clothes that looked clean but worn. Her dark skin gleamed in the morning sunlight as she clutched a faded backpack against her chest. Most striking were her eyes. They were focused, intelligent, watching everything that happened around the planes with the intensity of someone much older. Robert wondered briefly what she was doing there. This wasn't exactly a place where kids usually hung out. The private terminal was restricted, though security wasn't always perfect. Maybe she was waiting for someone. He shrugged and continued walking toward his jet. Captain Williams, his pilot for the past 3 years, was already conducting the pre-flight inspection. The man was thorough, professional, and had never given Robert any reason to worry. His co-pilot, Johnson, was running through the checklist inside the cockpit. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," Captain Williams called out. "Beautiful day for flying. We should have you in New York by noon." Robert nodded and pulled out his phone to check emails. The quarterly reports needed his review before the meeting, and he wanted to finish them during the flight. He was so absorbed in reading that he almost didn't notice the girl approaching. She had gotten up from the bench and was walking directly toward him. Her steps were purposeful, not hesitant like you'd expect from a child. Security guard Peterson, who was usually stationed near the terminal entrance, started moving toward her, probably to escort her away from the aircraft area. "Sir," the girl called out, her voice clear and surprisingly confident. "Excuse me, sir." Robert looked up from his phone, eyebrows raised. The girl was now just a few feet away, and he could see the determination in her expression. She wasn't some lost kid looking for help finding her parents. There was something urgent about her manner. "Your jet's brakes are malfunctioning," she said, pointing directly at his aircraft. The words hit Robert like a cold splash of water. Security guard Peterson reached them just as she spoke, placing a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder. "Come on now, miss," Peterson said kindly. "You can't be here, this is a restricted area." But Robert held up his hand, stopping the guard. Something about the girl's tone made him pause. She hadn't said the plane might have problems or that she thought something looked wrong. She had stated it as a fact, with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was talking about. "Wait," Robert said, studying the girl's face. "What did you just say?" The girl looked directly into his eyes without flinching. "Your jet's brakes are malfunctioning. There's hydraulic fluid leaking from the main landing gear, and the backup system is showing pressure loss." Captain Williams had overheard and walked over, his expression mixing amusement with professional concern. "Young lady, I just completed a full pre-flight inspection. All systems are normal." The girl turned to face the pilot, completely unfazed by his authority. "Did you check the brake lines near the wheel wells? The leak is small, but it's there. And listen to the hydraulic pump when it cycles. The sound is different from normal." Robert felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't some random guess. The girl was using technical language that most adults wouldn't understand, speaking with the precision of someone who knew aircraft systems. But how could a 12-year-old possibly know such things? "What's your name?" Robert asked. "Kaya," she replied, still focused on the jet. "I've been watching your plane for 20 minutes. The maintenance crew missed it during their inspection." Captain Williams frowned, clearly torn between dismissing a child's concerns and taking seriously what sounded like legitimate technical knowledge. Robert could see the pilot's mind working, probably remembering safety protocols that said any reported malfunction should be investigated, regardless of the source. "This is ridiculous, Johnson," the co-pilot said as he climbed down from the aircraft. "We're going to delay our flight because of something a kid thinks she saw." But Robert found himself studying Kaya more carefully. She didn't look nervous or excited like a child seeking attention. Instead, she appeared completely calm, as if she had simply observed a problem and was reporting it to the appropriate people. Her posture was confident, her voice steady. "How do you know about hydraulic systems?" Robert asked. "I watch the planes," Kaya said simply. "Every day after school. I've learned how they work." Robert glanced at his expensive watch. The New York meeting was important, and delaying the flight would create problems with his schedule, but something nagged at him. Maybe it was the girl's certainty or the way she had used technical terms without hesitation. Maybe it was just intuition built from years of making split-second business decisions. "Captain Williams," Robert said slowly, "let's have maintenance take another look." The pilot's eyebrows rose slightly. "Sir, we've already been cleared for takeoff. The inspection was completed an hour ago." "I understand that," Robert replied, surprised by his own decision. "But let's double-check. What's 30 minutes compared to our safety?" Captain Williams nodded reluctantly and radioed for the maintenance crew. Within minutes, 2 technicians approached the aircraft looking slightly annoyed at having to repeat work they had already finished. Kaya stood quietly beside Robert, watching as the maintenance team began their second inspection. She didn't seem excited or proud that someone was taking her seriously. Instead, she appeared focused on the aircraft, as if she were mentally reviewing every system and component. "There," she said suddenly, pointing toward the landing gear. "Check the brake line connection right there." One of the technicians followed. Her finger then knelt down to examine the area more closely. After a moment, he called his partner over. They both peered at something Robert couldn't see from where he stood. The conversation between the technicians became urgent, filled with technical jargon and concern. Robert felt his chest tighten as he watched their body language change from irritation to serious worry. Finally, the senior technician approached Captain Williams with a grim expression. "We need to ground this aircraft immediately," he said. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Robert felt his blood run cold as the maintenance technician's serious expression confirmed his worst fears. Captain Williams immediately stepped forward, his professional training taking over. "What exactly did you find?" the pilot asked, his voice tight with concern. The senior technician, whose name tag read Rodriguez, wiped his hands on a rag before answering. "The kid was right. There's a hairline crack in the primary brake line, almost invisible unless you know exactly where to look. It's been seeping hydraulic fluid slowly, probably for days." Robert looked over at Kaya, who remained calm despite the growing tension around the aircraft. She wasn't gloating or seeking praise for being correct. Instead, she continued studying the plane with those sharp, intelligent eyes. "How bad is it?" Captain Williams pressed. Rodriguez exchanged a meaningful look with his partner before answering. "Bad enough. The crack is small now, but the pressure from takeoff and landing cycles would have made it worse. You probably would have made it to New York just fine, but landing..." He shook his head grimly. "That's when brake systems face the most stress." Johnson, the co-pilot, had gone pale. "Are you saying we could have crashed?" "I'm saying your brake failure probability on landing would have been extremely high," Rodriguez replied bluntly. "And with the backup system showing early pressure loss like the girl mentioned, you would have been landing a $12 million aircraft with minimal stopping power." Robert felt his knees go weak. He had been minutes away from boarding a flight that could have killed him and his crew. All because a routine maintenance inspection had missed a nearly invisible crack that a 12-year-old girl had spotted from 20 feet away. "How did you see that?" he asked Kaya, his voice barely above a whisper. She pointed toward the bench where she had been sitting. "From over there. When the sun hits the landing gear at this angle, you can see the hydraulic fluid creating small reflections on the ground. It's not much, just tiny drops, but they're consistent. That means a steady leak, not just normal moisture." Rodriguez stared at her with amazement. Most of our junior technicians wouldn't have caught that detail. How long have you been watching aircraft? 3 months, Kai. A answered simply. Every day after school until dark. Robert's business mind began processing the implications. This girl had taught herself to identify aircraft malfunctions in just 3 months of observation. She had knowledge that professional technicians missed during their formal inspection, and she had potentially saved his life. Why do you come here every day? Robert asked, genuinely curious now. Kaya's confident demeanor flickered for just a moment, revealing something vulnerable underneath. I'm waiting for someone, she said quietly. Someone who was supposed to come back. Before Robert could ask more questions, Rodriguez called for additional maintenance personnel. Within minutes, the small area around Robert's jet had become busy with activity. Technicians swarmed over the aircraft, conducting the most thorough inspection it had probably ever received. Robert canceled his New York meeting with a quick phone call, explaining that aircraft maintenance issues required his immediate attention. His assistant would reschedule everything, probably assuming he was being overly cautious. If only she knew how close he had come to never making another business call. Captain Williams approached him as the maintenance work continued. Sir, I owe you an apology, and I owe that young lady much more than that. My inspection should have caught this problem. How long have you been flying? Robert asked. 22 years, including military service. I've never missed something like this before. The pilot looked genuinely shaken. If we had taken off, Robert placed a hand on the man's shoulder. We didn't take off. That's what matters. He walked back over to where Kaya sat on the bench, having returned to her original spot as the maintenance crew took over. She was reading a worn paperback book, something about aviation history, completely unbothered by the chaos she had caused. Kaya, Robert said, sitting down beside her, you saved my life today. She looked up from her book, studying his face with those remarkably mature eyes. I just saw something that didn't look right. Anyone would have said something. No, Robert replied firmly. Most people wouldn't have noticed anything wrong. And even if they had, most wouldn't have had the courage to speak up to a stranger, especially someone like me. Someone like you? She asked, tilting her head slightly. Robert realized how that sounded. I mean someone older, someone in business clothes, someone who might not listen to a kid. Kaya closed her book, using her finger to mark her place. My grandmother always says the truth doesn't care how old you are or what clothes you wear. If something's wrong, it's wrong. The simple wisdom of her words struck Robert deeply. In his world of corporate boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations, the truth was often complicated by politics, egos, and hidden agendas. But this 12-year-old had seen a problem and reported it directly, without any consideration for social hierarchies or potential embarrassment. Rodriguez approached them, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cool morning air. Mr. Harrison, we've completed our extended inspection. The brake issue was just the beginning. We found 3 other potential problems that could have caused serious complications during flight. Robert's stomach dropped again. 3 other problems? Minor issues individually, but they compound. A loose connection in the navigation system, irregular pressure readings in the cabin pressurization, and early wear indicators on 2 engine components. Nothing that would have caused an immediate emergency, but all problems that our standard inspection protocol should have identified. Kaya looked up with interest. What kind of irregular pressure readings? Rodriguez seemed surprised by the technical question coming from someone so young. The cabin pressure system was cycling more frequently than normal, indicating possible seal degradation. That would explain the slight whistling sound during the engine startup sequence, Kaya observed matter-of-factly. Robert stared at her. You heard a whistling sound? Just barely. Most people probably wouldn't notice it over the normal engine noise, but it was there. Rodriguez looked like someone had just shown him magic. Young lady, you've got better diagnostic instincts than technicians with years of training.
How is that possible?
Kaya shrugged, seeming uncomfortable with the attention. I just pay attention. When you watch the same things every day, you notice when something changes. The maintenance work continued for another hour. Robert found himself canceling his afternoon appointments as well, fascinated by watching Kaya observe the repair process. She asked intelligent questions about hydraulic systems, brake mechanisms, and aircraft safety protocols. Her curiosity was genuine, not the casual interest of someone making conversation. More importantly, She continued spotting details that others missed. When one technician was struggling to locate a part number, Kaya pointed out that the same number was visible on a component 6 feet away. When another worker couldn't figure out why a tool wasn't fitting properly, she noticed that he was using a metric wrench on standard bolts. By noon, Robert's aircraft was not only repaired but had received the most comprehensive maintenance check in its service history. Captain Williams declared it the safest flight-ready aircraft he had ever piloted. As the maintenance crew finished their work and began cleaning up, Robert realized he knew almost nothing about the remarkable girl who had saved his life. She had mentioned waiting for someone, but who? And why did a 12-year-old have such extensive knowledge of aircraft systems? "Kaya," he said as she prepared to leave. "Can I buy you lunch? I'd like to hear more about how you learned so much about airplanes." She hesitated, glancing toward the airport terminal building. "I usually eat the sandwich I bring from home." "Please," Robert insisted. "It's the least I can do for someone who probably saved my life today." After a moment's consideration, she nodded. "Okay, but just for a little while. I need to be back here by 3 o'clock. "Why 3 o'clock?" Robert asked. Her expression grew distant. "That's when the military transport planes usually arrive." The airport cafe was nearly empty at this hour, with just a few travelers grabbing quick meals between flights. Robert chose a quiet corner table where he and Kaya could talk without interruption. She ordered a simple grilled cheese sandwich and apple juice, politely declining his offer to get her anything more expensive. "So you come here to watch military transport planes?" Robert asked as they settled into their seats. Kaya nodded, unwrapping her sandwich carefully. "Every day at 3 o'clock, sometimes earlier. That's when they usually bring people home." "People like who?" Her small hands gripped the sandwich tighter. "My dad. He's supposed to come back, but he keeps getting delayed." Robert felt a familiar ache in his chest, the same feeling he got when his business decisions affected real families. "How long has he been gone?" 8 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days, Kaya replied without hesitation. "He was supposed to come home 6 weeks ago, but they extended his deployment. Then they extended it again last month." "What does your father do?" "He's a pilot. Captain Jerome Mitchell, Air Force. He flies cargo planes in dangerous places, bringing supplies to troops and medical supplies to civilians." Pride filled her voice when she talked about her father, even though Robert could see the sadness behind her eyes. "And your mother?" Kaya's expression grew quiet. "She died 2 years ago in a car accident. It's just me and Grandma Rose now." Robert's heart broke a little more with each detail. This brilliant child was essentially an orphan, living with her grandmother while her father served overseas. No wonder she spent her afternoons at the airport hoping to see him return. "Is that how you learned so much about aircraft?" Robert asked gently. "From your father?" "Some of it," Kaya admitted. "Before he deployed, Dad used to bring me to the base sometimes. He'd show me the planes and explain how everything worked. But mostly I learned by watching and reading." She reached into her worn backpack and pulled out several dog-eared books. Robert examined the titles: Aircraft Systems and Components, Basic Aerodynamics, and Flight Maintenance Procedures. These weren't children's books about airplanes. They were technical manuals that most adults would find challenging. "Where did you get these?" he asked, flipping through pages filled with complex diagrams and detailed specifications. "The maintenance crews here throw them away when they get new editions. I ask permission first, but they usually say I can keep the old ones. Sometimes the mechanics let me watch them work and answer my questions." Robert realized he was looking at something extraordinary. This 12-year-old had essentially given herself a technical education in aviation, using discarded manuals and pure determination. Her motivation wasn't academic curiosity or career planning. It was love for her father and hope for his safe return. "Does your grandmother know you come here every day?" "Yes, she knows. She worries about me walking here alone after school, but she understands why I need to be here. Grandma Rose says everyone grieves differently, and this is how I handle missing Dad." "How far do you walk?" "About 2 miles from our apartment. It's not bad, except when it rains hard." Robert tried to imagine this small girl walking 4 miles round trip every day, then spending hours at the airport studying aircraft and hoping to see her father's transport plane arrive. The dedication was remarkable, but it also highlighted how alone she was in dealing with her father's absence. "Tell me about your grandmother," he said. Kaya's face brightened slightly. "Grandma Rose is amazing. She's 68 but works 2 jobs to take care of us. During the day she cleans offices downtown, and 3 nights a week she works at a grocery store stocking shelves. She says she doesn't mind the work, but I know she gets tired. What about school? You must be an excellent student. I like school, especially math and science. My teachers say I'm advanced for my grade level. The school counselor, Mrs. Chen, thinks I should apply for special programs for gifted students. But those cost money we don't have. Robert felt anger building inside him, not at Kaya or her grandmother, but at a system that would let such obvious talent go undeveloped due to financial constraints. Here was a child who could spot aircraft malfunctions that trained technicians missed, yet she couldn't access educational opportunities because of money. What do you want to be when you grow up? He asked. A pilot like my dad. I want to fly cargo planes and help people in dangerous situations. But if I can't do that, maybe I'll be an aircraft mechanic or engineer. I just want to work with planes. She spoke with the quiet certainty of someone who had given the matter serious thought. Robert realized that Kaya wasn't just a smart kid with a hobby. She was a young person with genuine passion and natural talent for aviation, shaped by circumstances that had forced her to grow up too quickly. Has your father been able to call or send messages? Sometimes. The communications aren't always reliable where he's stationed. His last message was 3 weeks ago. He said he was fine but couldn't give details about when he'd be coming home. Her voice wavered slightly. Grandma Rose says no news is good news, but it's hard not knowing. Robert understood that uncertainty. In business, he always demanded clear timelines and regular progress reports. The idea of not knowing when a loved one would return, or even if they were safe, was almost unbearable to consider. Kaya, can I ask you something personal? She nodded, taking a sip of her apple juice. When you saw the problem with my airplane this morning, why did you decide to speak up? You could have just watched and kept the information to yourself. She considered the question seriously. My dad always says that if you see something dangerous and don't speak up, then any harm that happens is partly your responsibility. He says it takes courage to do the right thing, especially when people might not believe you or take you seriously. It must have been scary approaching a stranger like me. A little bit, she admitted, but I kept thinking about what would happen if the plane crashed and I had said nothing. I wouldn't be able to live with that. Robert was struck by the moral clarity of her reasoning. This child had risked embarrassment and rejection to potentially save lives. She had acted on principle, guided by values her father had instilled in her before his deployment. You mentioned that you need to be back by 3 o'clock to watch for transport planes. Do you really think your father might arrive today? Kaya's expression grew wistful. Probably not. But I've been wrong before. And what if today is the day he comes home and I'm not here to see his plane land? I'd never forgive myself for missing it. Robert checked his watch. It was already 2:15, which meant Kaya would need to leave soon. He found himself reluctant to end their conversation, both because he was genuinely interested in her story and because he was beginning to form an idea that could change her life. Kaya, what if I told you that I might be able to help locate information about your father's deployment? Her eyes widened with hope and caution. What kind of information? I have some connections with military contractors and government officials. I might be able to find out more specific details about his unit's schedule and expected return date. Would you really do that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I would. But I'd also like to meet your grandmother and talk to both of you about some other possibilities. What kind of possibilities? Robert smiled, thinking about the conversation he wanted to have with Grandma Rose. Educational possibilities. Opportunities for someone with your remarkable talents. Kaya looked at him with those serious, intelligent eyes. Why would you want to help us? You don't even know us. Because today you saved my life and I believe in repaying that kind of debt. But more than that, I've spent 30 years in business learning to recognize extraordinary potential when I see it. And what I see in you is something very special that deserves to be developed. She finished the last bite of her sandwich and carefully packed her books back into her backpack. I should go now. The transport planes will start arriving soon. Can I walk with you back to your watching spot? Robert asked. If you want to. As they walked back toward the bench where Kaya spent her afternoons, Robert found himself looking at the airport differently. What had always been just a convenient travel hub for him was, for this remarkable girl, a place of hope, learning, and patient waiting for her father's return. He was about to discover that today would be different from all the other days Kaya had spent watching the sky. That evening, Robert made phone calls from his downtown office that he never thought he'd be making. His first call was to Senator Patricia Williams, who served on the Armed Services Committee and owed him several favors from campaign contributions over the years. Patricia, I need information about an Air Force captain named Jerome Mitchell. He's deployed overseas and his family hasn't heard from him in weeks. Robert, you know I can't just pull military personnel files for private citizens. There are protocols, security clearances required. This isn't about classified information, Robert interrupted. A 12-year-old girl sits at Chicago Executive Airport every single day, waiting for her father to come home. I just need to know if he's safe and when his unit might be rotating back. Something in Robert's voice must have conveyed the urgency he felt, because Senator Williams agreed to make some discreet inquiries. Within 2 hours, she called him back with information that was both reassuring and troubling. Captain Mitchell is safe, she reported. He's stationed at a forward operating base in Eastern Europe, flying humanitarian supply missions into conflict zones. The reason his deployment has been extended twice is that he's been volunteering for the most dangerous flights to allow other pilots with families to rotate home on schedule. Robert felt a mixture of pride and concern, so he's choosing to stay longer. Not exactly choosing. There's a critical shortage of experienced cargo pilots willing to fly into active combat areas. Mitchell has been taking on extra missions because he's single-parent military, and his commanding officers thought his daughter was staying with relatives who could provide stable care. Single-parent military? It's a designation for service members whose children would have no other guardian if something happened to them during deployment. Usually those personnel get priority for stateside assignments or shorter deployments. But the paperwork indicates his daughter is in care of capable relatives. Robert realized the military didn't understand that capable relatives meant a 68-year-old grandmother working 2 jobs and struggling financially. Is there anything that can be done to get him home sooner? If the family situation has changed significantly, or if there are hardship circumstances that weren't documented originally, the military can reassess. But it would require official requests through proper channels. After ending the call, Robert sat in his office thinking about Kaya's daily vigil at the airport. She had no idea that her father was deliberately taking dangerous assignments to help other families reunite while sacrificing his own return home. The man was a hero, but his heroism was keeping him away from a daughter who desperately needed him. Robert's second call was to General David Martinez, a retired Air Force officer who now worked as a defense contractor. They had met at several industry conferences, and Robert had always been impressed by the man's integrity and connections. General, I need a favor that involves bringing a good soldier home to his family. After explaining the situation, General Martinez agreed to make inquiries through unofficial channels. Give me 48 hours, Robert. If this Captain Mitchell is half the pilot you describe his daughter to be a mechanic, we'll find a way to get him rotated home. The next morning, Robert decided to visit Kaya's neighborhood before heading to his office. The address she had mentioned was in a working-class area about 15 minutes from downtown, where small apartment buildings lined quiet streets filled with families just trying to get by. He found the building easily enough, a well-maintained 3-story structure with a small garden in front. Before knocking on apartment 2B, Robert realized he was nervous. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but the thought of meeting Kaya's grandmother filled him with uncertainty. The woman who opened the door was exactly what Robert had expected, and nothing like he had imagined. Grandma Rose was small in stature but radiated a strength that reminded him of his own grandmother. Her silver hair was neatly braided, and she wore a simple dress that looked freshly ironed despite her early morning work schedule. You must be the man Kaya told me about, she said, studying his face carefully. The one whose airplane she fixed. I'm Robert Harrison, ma'am. Your granddaughter saved my life yesterday. She told me what happened. Come in, please. I just put coffee on. The apartment was tiny but spotlessly clean and filled with signs of love and creativity. Photos of Kaya and her father covered one wall, showing a close relationship built on shared adventures and mutual respect. School awards and certificates decorated another wall, testament to Kaya's academic excellence despite her circumstances. Kaya's at school, Grandma Rose explained as she poured coffee into mismatched but cheerful cups. She wanted to stay home to meet you, but I told her education comes first, always. She's an extraordinary young woman, Robert said, accepting the coffee gratefully. In 30 years of business, I've rarely met anyone with her combination of intelligence, integrity, and courage. Grandma Rose smiled proudly. She gets that from her father. Jerome always taught her to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Mrs. Call me Rose, please. Rose, I want to help your family. Yesterday, Kaya potentially saved my life and my crew's lives by spotting problems that trained professionals missed. That kind of talent deserves to be developed and supported. Rose's expression grew cautious. What kind of help are you talking about, Mr. Harrison? Robert had prepared for this question, but he still felt nervous about her reaction. Educational support. Kaya mentioned that she's been recommended for advanced programs, but that the costs are prohibitive. I'd like to establish a scholarship fund that would cover her tuition. Books and related expenses. That's very generous, but we don't accept charity. This wouldn't be charity, Robert replied firmly. This would be an investment in someone who has already proven her value. Kaya has natural diagnostic abilities that could revolutionize aircraft safety if properly trained. I'm not offering help out of pity. I'm offering partnership in developing exceptional talent. Rose studied his face for a long moment. You really believe she's that gifted? I've never been more certain of anything. Yesterday, she identified multiple problems with a $12 million aircraft that had passed professional inspection. She understands complex systems intuitively, asks the right questions, and has the moral courage to speak up when she sees danger. These aren't skills you can teach easily. They're natural gifts that need the right environment to flourish. And what would you expect in return? Robert had anticipated this question too. Nothing more than the opportunity to watch her develop her abilities and hopefully contribute to aviation safety in the future. I'm not looking for gratitude or publicity. I'm looking to invest in someone who could make a real difference in the world. Rose was quiet for several minutes, sipping her coffee and thinking. Finally, she spoke again. Kaya's father always said that when people show you kindness, you pay it forward, not back. If you're serious about helping her education, I won't stand in the way. But there are conditions, name them. First, she continues living here with me. No boarding schools or anything that separates us. Second, she keeps her regular chores and responsibilities. Education doesn't excuse her from family obligations. Third, if this arrangement ever makes her feel entitled or changes her character, we end it immediately. Agreed completely, Robert said without hesitation. There's one more thing, Rose continued. Jerome doesn't know how much we've been struggling financially since he deployed. I've been handling everything so he can focus on staying safe and doing his job. If you're going to be part of Kaya's life, I need to know you understand the importance of family stability. Actually, I have some news about Captain Mitchell that might interest you. Robert explained his conversations with Senator Williams and General Martinez, watching Rose's eyes fill with hope and concern. You mean Jerome has been volunteering for dangerous missions to help other families? According to my sources, yes. He's been putting himself at greater risk so other pilots can come home to their children. Rose wiped her eyes with a tissue. That sounds exactly like something he would do. But Kaya needs him home too, I understand, and I believe we can make that happen soon. Just then, they heard footsteps on the stairs outside, and Kaya's voice calling out that she was home from school. When she opened the door and saw Robert sitting in their tiny living room, her face lit up with surprise and pleasure. Mr. Harrison, what are you doing here? I came to meet your grandmother and talk about some opportunities that might interest you. As Robert explained the scholarship offer, he watched Kaya's expression shift from disbelief to excitement to careful consideration. Even at 12, she was thinking through the implications and responsibilities that would come with such an opportunity. Would I still be able to come to the airport every day to watch for Dad? She asked. Absolutely. In fact, part of your advanced education might involve spending time at aircraft maintenance facilities and learning from professional mechanics. And Grandma Rose would still be my guardian? Of course. This is about enhancing your education, not changing your family. Kaya looked at her grandmother, who nodded encouragingly. What do you think, baby girl? I think, Kaya said slowly, that Dad would want me to take advantage of opportunities to learn and grow. And maybe if I become really good at aircraft systems, I can help make flying safer for everyone. Robert smiled, recognizing the same sense of purpose that had driven her to warn him about his aircraft. I think your father would be very proud of that decision. What none of them knew was that at that very moment, General Martinez was making a phone call that would change everything. 3 days later, Robert's phone rang at 6 in the morning. General Martinez's voice was filled with satisfaction when he delivered the news that would change everything for Kaya's family. "Robert, I have good news about Captain Mitchell. We found a way to bring him home." "How?" Robert asked, instantly alert despite the early hour. It turns out Mitchell's expertise and safety record make him perfect for a new training program we're implementing stateside. Instead of flying dangerous cargo missions overseas, he'll be teaching other pilots advanced safety procedures at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. It's a promotion, better pay, and most importantly, he'll be home every night. Robert felt a rush of excitement. When? His replacement is already en route to his current position. Mitchell should be wheels up for home within 72 hours. Does he know yet? His commanding officer is briefing him this morning. But here's the interesting part. When we explained the family hardship situation, Mitchell was shocked to learn that his daughter's guardian was struggling financially. Apparently, his ex-mother-in-law had been sending him letters saying everything was fine and not to worry about them. Robert shook his head, realizing that Grandma Rose had been protecting her son-in-law from worry, just as much as she had been protecting Kaya from despair. So he has no idea how difficult things have been? None whatsoever. This is going to be quite a reunion. After hanging up with General Martinez, Robert immediately called Rose to share the news. Her tears of joy were audible through the phone as she realized that her daily prayers for Jerome's safe return were finally being answered. "Should we tell Kaya now or wait until we have more specific details?" Rose asked. "Let's tell her this afternoon when she gets home from school. I'd like to be there when she hears the news, if that's all right with you. Of course, she'll want to share this moment with the person who made it possible." That afternoon, Robert arrived at the apartment just as Kaya was walking home from school. Her backpack was heavy with books, and she carried the latest aviation manual she had acquired from the airport maintenance crew. "Mr. Harrison," she called out, waving as she approached the building. "Did you know that the new Boeing 787 has a completely different hydraulic backup system than older aircraft? The mechanic showed me the schematics yesterday." Robert smiled at her enthusiasm. Even with all the changes happening in her life, Kaya remained focused on learning everything she could about aircraft systems. "That sounds fascinating, but I have some news that might interest you even more." Inside the apartment, Rose was trying to contain her excitement as she prepared snacks for their guest. Kaya sensed immediately that something important was happening. "What kind of news?" she asked, setting down her backpack carefully. Robert looked at Rose, who nodded encouragingly. "Kaya, your father is coming home." The words seemed to take a moment to register. Kaya stared at Robert with wide eyes, as if she was afraid to believe what she had heard. "Coming home when?" she whispered. "Within the next few days. He's been reassigned to a training position at Scott Air Force Base, which is only 3 hours from here. He'll be home every night." Kaya's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. Tears streamed down her face as she looked back and forth between Robert and her grandmother, seeking confirmation that this was real and not just a dream. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice shaking. Really sure?" "I'm sure," Robert replied gently. "I spoke to the general who arranged his transfer this morning. Your father doesn't even know yet that we've been helping. He just knows he's coming home to train other pilots in advanced safety procedures." "Safety procedures," Kaya repeated, then suddenly smiled through her tears. "Dad's going to be teaching other pilots how to avoid the kind of problems I spotted on your airplane." "Exactly. Your natural abilities for identifying potential aircraft problems come from the same source as your father's expertise in avoiding them." Rose sat down beside her granddaughter and pulled her into a warm hug. "Baby girl, your daddy's finally coming home." For the next hour, they made plans for Captain Mitchell's return. Kaya wanted to clean the apartment from top to bottom, cook his favorite meal, and make sure everything was perfect. Her excitement was infectious, and Robert found himself getting caught up in the preparations. "Where will Dad sleep?" Kaya asked suddenly. "His old room is being used for storage now." "We'll figure it out," Rose assured her. "Maybe it's time to find a bigger place now that things are looking up." Robert had been thinking about that exact issue. "Actually, I have a suggestion about housing that might work for everyone." He explained that his company owned several properties near Scott Air Force Base that were used for executive housing. One of them, a 3-bedroom house with a large yard, had been vacant for months. Captain Mitchell could live there rent-free as part of his compensation package for consulting with my aerospace division on safety protocols. It would give your family space and stability, and it would give me access to his professional expertise. Rose looked skeptical. That sounds too good to be true. It's a legitimate business arrangement, Robert assured her. Your son-in-law's safety record and experience with dangerous flying conditions make him extremely valuable as a consultant. Companies pay much more than free housing for that kind of expertise. 2 days later, Robert drove Kaya and Rose to Chicago Executive Airport to meet Captain Mitchell's flight. Kaya had been awake since 5 in the morning, too excited to sleep. She wore her best dress and had braided her hair in the same style her father always said made her look like a princess. What if he looks different? She asked nervously as they waited in the terminal. What if 8 months changed him? He's still your father, Rose replied calmly. And you're still his little girl. Robert watched the reunion from a respectful distance as Captain Jerome Mitchell emerged from the military transport aircraft. He was tall, lean, and moved with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to making life-or-death decisions under pressure. But when he saw Kaya running toward him across the tarmac, his professional composure dissolved into pure paternal joy. Father and daughter collided in a hug that seemed to make up for 8 months of separation in a single moment. Captain Mitchell lifted Kaya off her feet, spinning her around while she laughed and cried simultaneously. I missed you so much, Daddy, she said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. I missed you too, baby girl, every single day. Rose approached more slowly, giving them time for their reunion before stepping forward for her own emotional greeting. Captain Mitchell hugged his former mother-in-law with obvious gratitude and affection. Rose, I can't thank you enough for taking care of her while I was gone. I know it wasn't easy. She took care of me just as much as I took care of her, Rose replied diplomatically. As the family shared their reunion, Robert prepared to introduce himself and explain his role in bringing Captain Mitchell home. He was nervous about meeting the man whose daughter had saved his life and whose family he had grown to care about deeply. Dad, Kaya said, taking her father's hand and leading him toward Robert. I want you to meet someone very important. Captain Mitchell extended his hand with a firm grip and direct eye contact. You must be Robert Harrison. I understand I owe you a significant debt of gratitude. Actually, sir, it's the other way around. Your daughter saved my life and changed my perspective on what really matters. As they drove to the new house that would become the Mitchell family's home, Kaya sat between her father and grandmother in the back seat, telling him everything that had happened during his deployment. She described her daily vigils at the airport, her growing knowledge of aircraft systems, and finally, the morning she had spotted the brake malfunction that led to meeting Robert. You told a complete stranger that his airplane was broken? Captain Mitchell asked, pride and amazement mixing in his voice. I couldn't let him fly if I thought it wasn't safe, Kaya replied simply. You always taught me that if you see something dangerous and don't speak up, then any harm that happens is partly your responsibility. Captain Mitchell looked over at Robert with new understanding. She used my own words against me, didn't she? She used your words to save lives and bring our families together, Robert corrected. When they reached the house, Captain Mitchell stood in the driveway for several minutes, taking in the reality of his new situation. After months of military barracks and dangerous missions, he was looking at a real home where he could build a stable life with his daughter. This is really ours? He asked. It's yours as long as you're willing to share your expertise with my aviation safety team, Robert replied. And as long as you're comfortable with me continuing to support Kaya's education. Captain Mitchell turned to his daughter. Kaya, do you understand what Mr. Harrison is offering you? A chance to learn everything I can about aircraft and maybe help make flying safer for everyone, she replied without hesitation. And you want to do that? More than anything, Dad. I want to be like you, helping people and keeping them safe. Captain Mitchell looked at Robert with an expression of deep gratitude mixed with the protective instincts of a father. Mr. Harrison, I don't know how to repay what you've done for my family. You don't need to repay anything, Robert replied. Your daughter gave me back my life and taught me what real courage looks like. Supporting her education and helping your family isn't charity. It's an investment in someone who's going to make the world a safer place. 6 months later, Robert stood on the observation deck at Chicago Executive Airport, watching Kaya work alongside professional maintenance technicians on a routine aircraft inspection. She was now enrolled in an advanced STEM program and spent her afternoons learning practical aircraft maintenance skills from the same mechanics who had once thrown away the manuals she taught herself from. Captain Mitchell had proven to be an invaluable consultant, helping Robert's aerospace division develop new safety protocols based on his combat flying experience. More importantly, he was home every night for dinner with his daughter, helping her with homework and sharing stories about their mutual passion for aviation. The girl who had once sat alone on a bench, waiting hopefully for her father's return, was now surrounded by mentors, opportunities, and most importantly, family. Her natural talents were being developed through proper education and hands-on experience, while her character remained grounded in the values her father had instilled. "Mr. Harrison," Kaya called out from below, where she was examining a hydraulic system with practiced expertise. "Can you come look at this? I think I found something interesting." Robert smiled and headed down to the hangar floor. After all these months, he had learned to take Kaya's observations very seriously. Her ability to spot problems that others missed had only improved with training and experience. As he walked toward her, Robert reflected on how a single moment of courage from a 12-year-old girl had changed multiple lives forever. She had saved him from a potentially fatal aircraft malfunction, brought her father home safely, and opened his eyes to the importance of recognizing and nurturing extraordinary potential wherever it appears. The little girl who had alerted a millionaire to his jet's brake malfunction had turned out to be exactly who she appeared to be, someone with the knowledge, courage, and character to make the world a better place. And now she had the support and opportunity she needed to fulfill that promise.